Four Beloved Tales, Cinderella. Stories Around the World by Kari Meister. What is a fairy tale? Once upon a time, before the age of books, people gathered to tell stories. They told tales of fairies and magic, princes and witches. Ideas of love, jealousy, kindness and luck filled the stories. Some provided lessons, others just entertained. Most did both. These fairy tales passed from neighbour to neighbour, village to village, land to land. As the stories span across seas and over mountains, details changed to fit each culture. A poisoned slipper became a poisoned ring. A king became a sultan. A wolf became a tiger. Over time, fairy tales were collected and written down. Around the world today, people of all ages love to read or hear these timeless stories. For many years to come, fairy tales will continue to live happily ever after in our imaginations. Cinderella, a French fairy tale. Illustrated by Valentina Belloni. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful girl who lived with her stepmother and two stepsisters. The stepmother and stepsisters had very cruel hearts and treated the girl poorly. They made her do all the work, scrubbing the dishes, mopping the floors, washing the clothes and cleaning their bedrooms. The stepsisters dressed in their finest gowns and slept in the finest beds. The poor girl was given only rags to wear. She slept on a straw bed. The stepsisters called the girl Cinderella because her clothes were often covered in cinders and ashes from the fireplace near her bed. One day, an invitation for the prince's ball arrived. The stepsisters were delighted. They spent the next few days picking out gowns and deciding how to style their hair. Cinderella wanted to go to the ball too, but the stepsisters laughed. "You?" they said. "Certainly not. There is too much work for you to do. You must clean the entire house and help us get ready." When the day of the ball arrived and the stepsisters left, Cinderella cried. "I wish I could go," she said. As soon as Cinderella said this, her fairy godmother appeared. She touched Cinderella with her magic wand. The girl's rags turned into a gown of gold and silver. On her feet were glass slippers. Next, the fairy godmother turned a pumpkin into a coach. She turned 6 lizards into coachmen, a rat into a driver, and 6 mice into horses. But she warned, when the clock strikes midnight, the magic will be gone. Cinderella's beauty stunned everyone, especially the prince. She and the prince danced all night. When the clock struck midnight, Cinderella ran from the palace, losing 1 slipper. The prince was puzzled. Who was she? How could he find her? All he had was 1 glass slipper. The next day he issued a proclamation. "I shall marry the girl who fits the slipper." The prince's servant travelled from house to house. He tried the slipper on every girl. It did not fit any of them. At Cinderella's house the stepsisters tried. When the slipper did not fit, Cinderella asked, "May I try?" It fit perfectly. Cinderella's godmother reappeared and touched Cinderella with her wand. The rags were once again changed into fine cloth, and 2 days later Cinderella and the prince married and lived happily ever after. Little Burnt Face, a fairy tale from the Micmac tribe of North America, illustrated by Carolina Ferre. Once upon a time there lived a widower and his 3 daughters. They lived in a large village by the side of a lake. The oldest daughter was mean. The middle daughter thought only of herself, but the youngest daughter was kind and good. Every day when their father went off to hunt, the oldest daughter burned the youngest daughter with hot coals. She did this so often that the youngest daughter was covered with scars. The villagers called her Little Burnt Face. When the father asked why his youngest daughter was always burned, the oldest daughter lied. "I forbid her to go near the fire, father," the girl said, "but she disobeys and always falls in." On the farthest side of the village, in a beautiful wigwam, lived a great chief and his sister. The great chief was invisible. No one but his sister had ever seen him. One day the chief's sister announced that her brother would marry any girl who could see him. Girls rushed to the wigwam. "Can you see him?" the chief's sister asked. Many of the girls lied and said yes. Then the sister asked, "What is his shoulder strap made from?" The girls guessed. "A strip of rawhide." "With what does he pull his sled?" The girls guessed again. "A green willow branch." Then the chief's sister knew that they had not really seen him. The next day, the widower's 2 older daughters went to the chief's wigwam. Little Burnt-Face wanted to go too, but she had nothing to wear but rags. So she ran into the woods and peeled bark from the birch trees. She made herself a dress, a cap and leggings. She borrowed her father's moccasins for her feet. When Little Burnt-Face got to the wigwam, she gasped. The great chief was there, and she could see him. The chief's sister asked, "What is his shoulder strap made from?" Little Burnt-Face's sisters answered, "A strip of rawhide." But Little Burnt-Face said, "Oh no, it's the Milky Way." "And with what does he pull his sled?" The older girls answered, "A green willow branch." But Little Burnt-Face said, "No, it's a rainbow." The chief's sister exclaimed, "You have truly seen him." She bathed Little Burnt-Face with dew, and the girl's scars vanished. The great chief also changed. He was no longer invisible. Little Burnt-Face and the great chief married. The whole village celebrated except for the widower's 2 older daughters. They were driven from the village forever. Ye Shen, a Chinese fairy tale, illustrated by Ava Montanari. Thousands of years ago in China, there lived a cave chieftain named Wu. He had 2 wives. His first wife was beautiful and kind. She gave birth to a daughter, Ye Shen, who was very much like her. Sadly, Ye Shen's mother died. Shortly thereafter, Wu died too. Wu's second wife had a daughter named Junli. Junli and her mother were cruel and lazy. Without any other family, Ye Shen was brought into their home. They ordered Ye Shen to do all the work, collecting wood, washing clothes, and scrubbing the floor. Ye Shen's only comfort was a golden fish that lived in the lake near the cave. Every day she shared what little food she had with the fish. One day Ye Shen's stepmother found out about the fish. She was furious. She did not want Ye Shen to have any joy. She captured the fish, cooked it, and served it for dinner. When Ye Shen learned what had happened, she wept. The fish had been her only friend. But the spirit of the fish spoke to her. "Do not worry," it said. "Whenever you need something, just ask my bones." Soon the New Year festival arrived, a time for singing and dancing, but also a time for men to seek wives. Ye Shen wanted to go, but her stepmother made her stay home. She didn't want Ye Shen to ruin Junli's chances of finding a husband. Ye Shen cried to the fish bones. As promised, the spirit fish took care of Ye Shen. It dressed her in a beautiful silk gown and golden slippers woven into a pattern of fish scales. But the spirit fish warned, "Be careful with the slippers. If you lose one, you shall hear from me no more." At the festival, everyone wondered who the dazzling girl was. "She looks like Ye Shen," said Junli. Ye Shen panicked and ran, losing one of her slippers. A villager found it the next day. He sold it to a merchant, who then brought it to the king. The king marveled at the tiny slipper. He decided that the slipper's owner should be his wife. Every woman in the land tried on the slipper, including Ye Shen. When Ye Shen put it on, it fit perfectly. Her rags turned to silk. She married the king and lived happily ever after. Fate was not as kind to Ye Shen's stepmother and stepsister. It was said they were crushed by a shower of flying stones. Rhodopis, an Egyptian fairy tale, illustrated by Polona Kosek. Long ago, pirates kidnapped a beautiful girl from Greece. They sold her as a slave to an old master in Egypt. The master had several servants already working in his house. They made the new girl do the hardest work, washing the clothes, making the meals, and weeding the garden. They called her Rhodopis, which means rosy-cheeked. Her skin was fair and turned red when she worked in the sun. Because the servants were mean, Rhodopis made friends with the Nile River animals. After her work was done, she often went to the river's edge. There she talked to the hippopotamus and danced with the ibis. One hot day, the master spotted Rhodopis dancing by the river. "Someone with such grace should not go shoeless," he said. He had a pair of rose-red slippers made for her. The other girls were jealous of the new slippers and treated Rhodopis even worse. Not long after this, a message arrived. The pharaoh invited everyone to his court for music, dancing, and a feast. Rhodopis wanted to go, but the other girls would not let her. "Sorry," they said, "someone has to stay behind and do the chores." They put on their nicest dresses and left. Rhodopis went to the river to do the washing, but she couldn't stop thinking of the pharaoh's court. She forgot to take off her slippers, and soon they were soaking wet. Rhodopis put them in the sun to dry. A falcon swooped down and snatched one of her slippers. Rhodopis was awestruck. She knew that the falcon was really the god Horus. Horus carried the slipper over the Nile and landed at the pharaoh's court. He presented the slipper to the pharaoh. "This slipper is a sign from Horus," he announced. "Whoever fits this slipper, I shall marry." The pharaoh searched high and low for the slipper's owner. Many girls tried, but all failed. At last he came to the old master's house. The servant girls tried the slipper. It did not fit. Then the pharaoh saw Rhodopis. "Will you try it on?" he asked. Rhodopis put on the slipper. It fit. The following day she and the pharaoh were married. Together they ruled Egypt for many, many years.